And we'll move to the presentation. First paper what we have, impact of granting microfinance facilities on the living standard of the rural poor. Study based on district of Monaragala. And this is Mrs. G. Gunawardena. She is a PhD student at KDU, right? And at the moment I think she's working at a bank. Am I right? It's not much clear what you write here. Anyway, Mrs. G. Gunawardena, over to you.
Good afternoon, conference chair, ladies and gentlemen. My topic for presenting today is the impact of granting microfinance facilities on the living standards of the rural poor in Sri Lanka. Actually, I guess the chair for this session gave the introduction for my research, that we can't live without finance, and finance has a very large impact on how we live, and it has a large impact on how the economy of a country is being sustained. Okay, and when it comes to microfinance, I'll give a very brief introduction. When it comes to microfinance, microfinance is the portion of finance where you're financing in very small amounts to the people who are merely recognized as the poor of the country. As a developing country in Sri Lanka, we have about almost 60% of our population who are living under what we have identified as the poverty line according to the world records. And 90% of those people are living in the rural areas of the country. So when it comes to microfinance, microfinance is the branch of finance where we basically fund these people in order to uplift their living standards, because if you do not uplift the living standards of the people, there is no point in funding them for any type of enterprise. Like if you do not evaluate or if you do not encourage them to improve their living standards, these people will fall into what is called a safety net, where they keep on borrowing, and if you try to provide free funds, okay, they will keep on getting funds from the providers without trying to earn for themselves or uplifting their living standards. So that is a phenomenon which has been identified in history, identified in literature. So therefore we need not put our people into that pocket. We need them to upgrade their living standards. So microfinance, some people call it the microcredit, and they plays a very pivotal role in upbringing the economic conditions of countries. So therefore it's very, very important. It intends the alleviation of poverty. That is the main idea of having microfinance. Not only alleviation of poverty, but they think of empowering the empowerment of the poor, market development and access, as well as use of information profitably. Now, Sri Lankan government has been working on these microfinance schemes for a very long period, and they have been affiliated with numerous government as well as non-governmental organizations. They were trying to do the upliftment of these living standards, but there are very little studies which has been done to connect the upliftment of the living standards with the microfinance schemes which has been granted throughout the country. So this study generally intends to fill this gap in knowledge. That was my main intention when I started along this research. So this study is based on a purposely selected geographical area of Monaragala and Kegal. I'll tell you why I have selected those two geographical areas. Because if you look at the statistics which are published by the Census and Statistics Department of Sri Lanka, we have a very heterogeneous contribution of poverty in Sri Lanka, where like in Colombo district the poverty statistics are about 6%, whereas district like Monaragala and Kegal it's something between 30 to 37%. So among those identified districts where they have more poverty, districts like Hambantota and Puttalam, they have showed a decreasing in poverty about for 20% for the last few years, but Kegal and Monaragala have not. So that was the reason why I have selected two areas. And the question which was addressed to the research was, what is the impact of microfinance facilities on the living standards of the rural poor in Sri Lanka? I just really wanted to find out whether the beneficiaries of these microfinance schemes do get an upliftment of their living standards as a result of getting these facilities for them. So if we go into a little bit of history, that's a theoretical background, there are a lot of models, there are a lot of writers who have written on microfinance and the upliftment of living standards. And one thing is the Grameen model of Bangladesh. Most of you all must be knowing what this is. This is about lending in very small amounts to a group of people, and the Grameen model was basically developed to lend to the poor women in Bangladesh, and it has been a widely accepted model worldwide. And there was a writer called Banuri S. that was in 2006. He has stated that microfinance is for the purpose of giving the same facilities which the rich are getting, even in small amounts, to the poorer people of the country. And Murray and Boros 2002 and Legawood in 1998, they have identified that microfinance has an impact on the living standards. And Vijayawardena W.A., who is one of the former deputy governors of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, he has written immensely on this topic, and he has identified that if a microfinance scheme in a country fails, since that it represents the majority of the country, it will have a systematic impact on the total economy of the country. And Tilakaratne and Wickramasinghe 2005, they have done a study based on 17 districts in Sri Lanka, except the north and east, and they have identified that it has an impact on the income level of the poor, but that is not on the living standards, but it has some kind of a connection. Where Attapattu A has said, in Sri Lanka, although the GDP is rising, the income distribution is very unequal, so therefore the poor people are not benefiting from the GDP increase in the country. And Stenwood and Bartocha also has expressed something like that. These are very few items which I have picked from my literature survey, which I have referred about 150 to 200 articles in this research. So when it comes to the methodology and conceptualization, I have taken the pre and post study design, where the same sample was studied pre-credit facilities as post-credit facilities. So the pre-credit facility data has been collected as secondary data, whereas post-credit facility data has been collected as primary data. And I have identified for the clarity of the population, I have taken people which have taken microfinance facilities from the commercial banks in these two districts, licensed commercial banks, between the years 2010 to 2012. And the sample has been stratified according to their pre-credit income levels, that is below 5,000, 5 to 8,000, as well as 8 to 10,000. That is the pre-credit income levels. That has been my strata, and the total population has been 465, and the sample has been identified as 115 at a confidence level of 95% and a confidence interval of 8%. So the conceptualization has been based on the past studies, that is the Tilakaratne and Wickramasinghe of 2005 and Banuri 2006. And here I would like to present my conceptual framework. I'm not sure whether the letters are very clear, but under the microfinance facilities, as which I've identified as the independent variables, I have taken the time utilization of funds, utilization of microfinance fund for the intended purpose, and the risk management ability of the borrowers, which has been tested against the dependent variable of living standards. That is, under that, the sub-variables are household assets, household savings, and household expenditure. And from that point onwards, we are moving on to the data analysis and findings. I have collected the primary data through a questionnaire which I administered to the sample, and it contained 21 questions, and I have given it on Likert scale, and a certain questions has been administered in order to identify their demographics. And the selected sample consisted of 82% of males, which shows a really contrasting figure from the Professor Muhammad Yunus microfinance model, because it emphasizes on lending to women, but in the Sri Lankan context we have been lending to males like predominantly. And the Pearson correlation analysis has been done between the two independent, the main dependent and independent variables, as well as between the co-variables or the sub-variables. So the Pearson correlation analysis gives the figure like against the time utilization of funds to the standard of living, it's 0.387, and utilization of funds for the intended purpose is 0.558, which is the strongest relationship of all. And the risk management ability of with the standard of living is 0.0149. So you all can see the strongest relationship is the utilization of funds for the intended purpose. But when we were gathering data, when I was talking to the respondents, it was identified that utilization of funds for the intended purpose works as another requirement for their further credit. So the researcher is not definite about whether this is the reason for this positive correlation, this highest correlation, but this research does not establish any facts to say it is because of this, it is because of the reason that it is being considered as a factor for further credit. So I'm not going to comment on that. It is just a suggestion about which some of the knowledge which I gathered by talking to the respondents. And this chart will show you the relationship between the subvariables. And the utilization of funds for the intended purpose again holds the highest correlation against household savings as well as with household assets. Okay, so like in analysis, the relationship between subvariables also, the utilization of funds for the intended purpose has given the highest correlation, whereas the timely utilization of money has given the lowest correlation. The risk management ability of the borrowers has given the lowest correlation. So telling us that the risk management ability has not been incarnated in the people who are the borrowers of the microfinance facilities. And when it comes to the hypothesis, these are the two hypotheses which I tested on my study. That is, the microfinance facilities does not have a positive impact over the living standards of the borrowers, which I have rejected through the study. And the microfinance facilities does have a positive impact on the living standards of the borrowers has been accepted to say that there is an impact of the microfinance facilities on the living standards of the borrowers in Sri Lanka, that is among the rural population. The other findings to the study has been the income level stratum with a pre-credit income of 8 to 10K indicated the highest improvement in living standards, which is again contrasting with one of the literature studies which I have gone through, because according to the 2005 study which has been done by Tilakaratna and Vikramasinghe, it has been stated the lowest income group is being benefited most in increasing their income levels through microfinance facilities. But according to the study, according to the data which I have collected, the income stratum between 8 to 10K, that is the pre-credit income level, has shown the highest increase in their living standards. And the level of increase in household assets are high, but in time of financial difficulty, the borrowers of the habit of disposing the acquired assets. So, like according to the study, the acquiring of household savings is low. They are not in the habit of savings, but they are acquiring household assets. But what happens is when they come into financial difficulty, these are some extra findings. When it comes to a financial difficulty, they dispose the household assets which they have already acquired, and they utilize that money. So, which is identified as a consequence of low household income, low household savings. Okay, that's a consequence of low household savings. And the level of increase in household savings are low, indicating a negative impact on growth in terms of scale effect, because when it comes to microfinance or any other financial facility, we believe something called the scale effect, which says like the investment that you can make or the growth that you can have depends on the amount which you can invest. That is a scale effect. It has a contributory effect on what you can gain. So if your contribution is low, then your outcome is also going to be low. So if your savings are low, the amount or the capital which you will be able to invest would be low, resulting in a lesser outcome. So although there is a positive impact on microfinance facilities which has been granted to the Sri Lankan poor, that is the rural poor in Sri Lanka, has a positive impact on their living standards, I recommend that they should be more educated on how to manage their risk and how they can build up their savings through whatever they earn. So therefore we can get a better upliftment on their living standards, as well as further studies I would suggest that this should be applied to the whole country, and we could if we can propose a framework in which we can analyze the impact of these facilities on an ongoing basis, which would be applied to the whole country, that would be beneficial for the financial institutions as well as for the benefactors of such facilities. Thank you.